Right. Welcome and thank you, everyone who joins and listens to the Internet of Value Foundation New York, episode 82. And I hope that everyone finds this information as valuable as I know I do every single day. And I look forward to hearing all of the great information that everyone is going to bring and speak about in here every day. That occurs every day. I'm sorry. I'm already brain melting from today. I was unfortunately stuck out in the rain most of the day while working, so I'm a little tired. But I notice now that I have to fix the title of the space. As tired as I am, I guess I spelled the title wrong. But shellfish dazzling. If you guys would like to speak about anything above or any concepts, things you guys have been thinking about, dazzling, especially if you watched that clip that I had sent you, please feel free to speak on that. And anybody in the audience, John and Four Dads, if you guys want to come up and speak or have anything to add input, please feel free to type in the bubble at the bottom right.
Hey guys, good morning. Yeah, that's funny though, because I had a rough sleep last night, so I'm a little hazy trying to get going this morning. But no, yeah, I finally watched the video. It was really good. I was at work when I watched it. But one thing I did like about it is his visualizations that he kind of threw up there, and how he uses ChatGPT to kind of, pull all this stuff together. I was surprised to know that he worked with the team that built GDP. So that was really cool. But I'm also out walking, so I'll be short of breath as well.
Yeah, he knows the team fairly well, and I think that's way before even Chat GPT 4, right? The early Chat GPT. But then similar industries, similar sectors. Yeah, people typically know each other, and you're 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 very right. I completely agree. When you have a clear observation of what a metagraph can look like, that can formulate into a hypergraph because of all of the contextual the computation that's being simulated on a graph formation in this multi-dimensional kind of aspect of way is it's really cool nonetheless, but makes things a little bit more in my opinion understandable when we talk about it. So shellfish, any topics that you particularly would like to talk about before we go down the? I think I'm gonna maybe in a little bit because I didn't have anything planned, but when I think of the Internet of Value, I think I'm gonna maybe try and give my own opinion about how I think the Internet of Value is going to start scaling from a point of view of where we are today, and then maybe where we could be in like 15 years.
I had just happened to find like a few hours ago. I was on my second run of it. There was a gentleman breaking down the principle of computation of equivalence, and yeah, I don't know. It was a good video, but you're not on the rule yet today, so we'll wait and do that one another day because that ends up being a long discussion.
It's completely fine to speak about. I have no just because it's not title. It definitely has to do with quantum, artificial, or sorry, augmented intelligence. As I guess I could at least say that without cringing, and the Internet of Value itself.
Well, I don't know. There was a few different.
Computational equivalence. What, in your opinion?
Well, he was breaking down a lot of stuff. I guess prior to the Ruliad, or when Wolfram had just kind of come out with the theories, and this gentleman was breaking down the theology behind it, and I thought that was kind of cool that he was able to incorporate that. I don't know. It was a lot to digest. So, like I said, I was on run number 2, almost made it all the way through before 3:30. So.
What about you, Dazzling? You wanna give it a shot? before I give my interpretation? Or Sierra, I'm glad you're up here, and Zara, you guys are the best. Wow,
I think
wow,
I
we're
did.
outnumbered by women right now. This is very interesting.
No, I think I got to the best explanation that I could last time I spoke about it. So I'll have to do a little more to keep going. But no, you go ahead for sure.
So the easiest term that I can say of where this computational equivalent leads to is this thought that um, in the complex nature of all of the different systems that we could build and assimilate together, if we were to replicate something like a black hole, remember, as my example was last dazzling, this unfortunate but fortunate factor of computational irreducibility existing, really meaning that if you were to simulate a true black hole and the nature of the black hole's existence through time, you would need the amount of energy output that it took for that black hole to exist and to assimilate in nature itself. And so this this kind of significance that we could never really build a computational system that could basically give us the answer to the universe, because it would take all of the energy that the universe is. And it's at the same time like uh, a ceiling, maybe you could put it, that could possibly be broken thousands of years, hundreds of years in the future. Who knows what we build tool wise? But um, the notion that nature itself computationally takes up such a tremendous amount of energy that for us to try and replicate the exact atomic structures in the way that we want to formulate them will take just as much energy, mathematically, theoretically running the test, that nature would take itself existing. Or it's one in the same in a different dimensional sense.
Yeah, so basically how he broke it down in the video was we have to live through the experience, we can't peek forward. Is like the super, super simple way of putting it.
Yeah, I guess that was really simple. Yeah. Sorry, I guess I did go down a road there. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You use some words that I have to look up. Unfortunately, my vocabulary is not as big as yours, so embarrassed right now. But yeah, thank you.
Well, what was the word? You could just.
I'm right there with you.
Thank God. I'm so there's always a few of them. I mean, you say them a lot, so I'm familiar with the word, but sometimes the meanings escape me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so the um the thought of the computational irreducibility being actually a term which is really like part of Stephen Wolfram's um, life work. Really, all of his work is his last book of that came out trying to describe the stages of entropy in a multi-dimensional sense that leads to the form factor of the way that we, of observers, in this third dimensional sense, observe the computational systems as we do. And that being one of the terms that he really speaks to, right? Computational irreducibility being something that is significant to us as observers, as this third dimensional species. Very, very significant. But also, uh, if you're going to look at time as like a string that could be folded up on itself as many times as you would want to, the thought of computational irreducibility and the Rouliad gives you kind of like a tool set where you could think of like building a map and a structure, right? It gives you different tools that you can use to kind of build the analog of where you perceive that existence to be. And Dazzling, you have your hand up. Please go ahead, man.
So he's basically trying to recreate every single particle, but in a computational way. Is that correct?
Well, it's the notion that if we were to try and create this simulated computational system where even like a virtual environment where it was a mimic of the real world, it would take as much energy to theoretically have that to exist that the real world would take to exist.
That sounds like one really cool metaverse. I won't lie.
Yeah, well, so this like thought that metaverse that will always exist on this material system, at least for the time being, as our species knows, right? This material system that we have in the third dimensional sense, where there's all these atoms that are bound together, and we're using different materials that then compute electromagnetic frequencies that then assimilate in a third dimensional sense the virtual reality environment. But like that, like the thought of the notion of actually having as much energy as it takes for the universe to exist, um, it's like unfathomable, right? To try and to me at least, it seems unfathomable to try and explain the multi infinite dimensional multiversal aspect that kind of brings to the possible equation. And so in quantum mechanics, making things a little interesting to look at.
Just digesting that all.
Yeah, and feel free to pick on anything or change the subject or anything you guys would like to talk about.
Yeah, I don't know if I can follow that. Thank you, Death. You always give me something new to think about, or a different way to think about things. I'm definitely going to be digesting that for a little. Something I would like to throw on the table, if anybody does want to talk about it, is the AI safety meeting that happened today between Elon Musk, Greg Brockman, who's the president, I believe, of OpenAI, the prime minister of Israel, and also some guy called Mad Max that everybody in Silicon Valley knows who he is. I'm not really sure what he has done besides that he came from MIT. But if anyone tuned into that, there were some interesting things about UBI brought up that I thought, Death, you might want to, I don't know, expound on.
No, I totally missed it actually today. Unfortunately, work was in really a non-serviceable area, and I was being rained upon all day, so not the funnest day. But I did not see that. If you want to talk about it, I would love to hear some of the maybe main points that were spoken about and comments maybe that were made.
I missed it as
Yeah.
well, Sierra.
Oh, I can give you guys some cliff notes. It was good. And it was live streamed here on X. I believe that those are recorded, so I shared them if anyone like has any interest in going back and checking them out. But my key takeaways were so UBI was mentioned. OpenAI brought that up, and the research study that they have done in kind of rolling that out in a small sample population, and their findings of that. I will say Elon was definitely the most positive person in the room. The OpenAI people were not fear mongering, but not shy about using the words extinction. And they talked about AGI and superintelligence. And yeah, they didn't hold back. I would definitely tune in to kind of catch the details of each of those, but what I found most interesting was the difference in dynamic personalities on stage, but the things that they did agree on. So they are all still calling for regulatory control, some sort of regulatory agency, for whether that be through licensing or just for specific use cases of deploying modules. That was heavily agreed upon and present in the conversation. They also talked about some really positive futures, the age of abundance. Elon specifically equated life with access to or equal access to AI. He said it would be akin to like what people imagine life in heaven to be, because no one would have to work and everything would be abundant and it would just be there. Obviously, that's an extremely optimistic future, but yeah, there were a lot of different positive things that were discussed, just surrounding lack of scarcity in the future, but obviously tons of hurdles on the way to that. And OpenAI was the resounding, so long as AGI doesn't kill us first in the room. And that's my TLDR for the first AI safety roundtable, which is cool. We had our first AI safety roundtable on a global stage, and that's amazing.
It's interesting that these were your cliff notes and comments that you took from it, and I love it. I feel like I feel like I don't even need to watch it. I feel like that was it. You got the message, right? Because it's all about right. Speaking is all about getting that intent of the the emotional side of what you're trying to explain and share it as an experience. And you made me feel it right there for sure. The thing I find the most interesting was that kind of mention of the UBI from OpenAI in particular. But yeah, I love that. Go ahead, Shellfish. Sorry.
I'm just curious because it was supposed to be a quick roundtable. If ASI is so far away, that was something they decided to bring up in such a short meeting. Isn't ASI in their open opinion really far off?
Do you mean AGI or well, either
No,
or?
no,
Super intelligence. Yeah,
yeah,
they
you said
talked about both.
well,
So the timeline that they gave, and they were not shy about timeline either. There were some projected dates dropped. They said AGI by 2029, likely with a singularity of some sort, and then the merge in 2030, which I guess is the projected timeline in which they're guessing humans will in some way be merging with machinery. Neuralink was surprisingly not at the forefront of that conversation. They were speaking mostly regarding theoretical other sciences, and Elon comments on that pretty like in detail. So please don't hang on my words there, and do go check out the video for direct quotes. But I just thought that was interesting. It almost seemed to be kind of like universally understood. Like Elon said something about the merge in 2030, and everyone nodded, and there was a pause of like consideration, like, oh, yeah. And then the conversation continued. So it was really interesting to watch. But the general consensus was like 5 to 6 years till AGI.
that's really fascinating because Scooble has been really out there lately in a lot of the spaces, and it seems like his timeline as well has been the 2030-ish for the Neuralink. So that's awesome that they're putting that out there now.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's not the first time I've heard that. I believe it came from a book that they all really like. I believe it's called A Singularity Is Here, but I can't remember who wrote it. So I'll look into details for that and share it with you all if I can quickly find it.
yeah. In my opinion, I think the coining of this term, although I will not call it in the sense artificial general intelligence, I think in the 2030s, it gets adopted, and as you said, assimilation in some sense kind of begins in society sociologically and physically, because we are the AGI, right? I mean, if there is a intelligent system that is built out there that is upgradable, it is by far, in my opinion, going to be us that is going to be able to upgrade ourselves, and these computational systems just being a part of that, or a like one of these needles in the thread that makes up the entire structure of what exists. But I loved it, and them being so vocal about this at 2030 is pretty early, actually, even in my opinion. Right, I've kind of said for a long time, 2027 to 2032, I believe we hit this kind of flywheel effect, that the velocity of technology itself being newly created, and things like new materials, molecular formations, different particles being able to be assimilated to create different materials, kind of just has a Cambrian explosion of possibilities. And that also plays a part in, battery life, the means of the way that we communicate with each other, electromagnetic frequencies themselves. I mean, the assimilations of matter. So it's definitely going to be a tremendous amount of things that these smart tooling systems, paired with the ability to be attached to all of the information we've compiled in quantum computing, will be able to output for us. Sorry, Shellfish, you had your hand up. Go ahead, and then Dazzle.
No, I'm just so with this acceleration that's coming within the next 5 to 8 years, whatever, and kind of wrapping it back into the Ruliad, and we have to live through experiences. We can't peek forward. I mean, is this like life extension stuff, like really possible, like wormholes, like all these, like I'm like trying to understand like how this stuff is actually going to be possible with our physical bodies.
If you're asking me my opinion, anything is possible. The question is will the tooling set be enabled, and is it possible for us to generate this tooling set in our particular universe, or our reality that we exist in? The infinite possibility of everything existing doesn't mean that you, in this particular identity that you're experiencing at this moment, in my opinion, will then theoretically be able to experience, all of the possibilities that assimilate. Right, you will only have one experience, and although your experience may differ from any other experience that another may have of the same action that occurred, but this singular experience existing in your reality doesn't and like spill over in the sense of you experiencing all of the other realities that exist. At the same time, as I do think there's some sort of particle retention or some sort of similarity to the energy that exists, it is but you existing at a different moment in time and space, vibrating at a different frequency.
I was just going to say that 7 years doesn't really seem that far away. I think we're all old enough to remember exactly what we were doing 7 years ago, and it didn't really seem that long ago. It seems as though we're really on the edge of that exponential curve. But yeah, I mean, with things moving forward, there are things that I've been able to do, even just with ChatGPT, that there's no way I could do even a year ago. And I was tinkering around trying to figure them out, but it was taking me months to try and do them. So kind of leveraging the technology enabled me to basically nail them down within a matter of days or weeks. So you see that kind of exponential curve in productivity across the whole globe when everyone starts utilizing it. Wow, like you can really start to see how it's going to take off. It's really exciting.
Something I will share that is a direct quote that Elon said that I found really interesting and also really relatable was that digital superintelligence is a black hole. We don't know what's going to happen when we get to the event horizon. And he then went on to say, I think we can all agree, and everybody nodded, that we are circling the event horizon now.
Sorry to jump in again, but I'm just thinking like sitting in the car with Dad back in the 90s, right? And just trying to tell him, can you imagine like self-driving cars, Dad? I could see him just turning around, just looking at me going, you're crazy, mate.
Well, there's another way you can term this that I think also, in a thought, because it just hit me. It's like we can call it super intelligence, you can also call it super awareness, right? And because in reality, what it is increasing, what all of these tool sets increase, what we as a species have created in a means of distributing information in the electromagnetic way that we do with microchips today. This it's interesting because you kind of can relate like intelligence to awareness, and where this heightened sense of awareness, or really this ability to observe more electromagnetic frequencies existing at every single moment that exists, uh, it's it's really easy to understand how it could be possible to exist, at least in a theoretical sense of what is being done. And 808, man, glad you're here. Welcome,
Hello,
and please speak.
everybody. It's crazy because I just mentioned self-driving cars, Daz, and I just posted up in the chat as you were talking about it. Because even though it's looked at as narrow AI, it is like a low-level AGI where it does collect data from its surrounding areas via camera, sensors, GPS, to actually help it decide what to do. So in a sense, we are kind of already there, but at the lowest, most basic foundations of it before it actually starts to explode. So in a sense, like how you guys are talking about the explosion of it within the past 5 to 10 years did take off. Um, one of the reasons why I was like have been in the forefront with this kinds of technology is because Hawaii was actually one of the first to have self-driving cars, which came before COVID happened. And stuff like that where they wanted to test it out inside Waikiki because of the spot it was at. It was a tourist place, the congestion, the how the city streets are and traffic and stuff like that. But yeah, so we are at the basis and the foundations of these things being allowed to actually go further into a lot of our different industries. But before that even happens, we're still gonna have to need regulation to kind of step into place to kind of, regulate some of these entities that's gonna allow a lot of these to touch in these different aspects of our worlds. But yeah, it's like I like how you mentioned it's like how you collected data through our own minds and how they use it, the different energies, because it all correlates. It's crazy, but if you break it down all the way down to subatomic atoms kind levels, it's pretty much exactly the same.
Exactly. That I love that you came up. Thank you, 808. And I did not see Shellfish. Did you have your hand up first? I'm not. I wasn't. I'm not sure. Sorry about that. But
Uh, I'm just thinking with Elon talking last week about maybe 2 weeks ago with doing the self-driving cars and how his systems were able or are able to learn off of YouTube and videos now. The time scale that Sierra said was 2029 and then 2030. So that means we all have the systems in us where we've assimilated in and are integrated in, and the leap in 1 year, because now the death augmented intelligence, super intelligence, general intelligence, whatever. I but I don't want to offend anyway. So like in that 1 year, the ability to experience through an actual human awareness um, will probably be the Cambrian explosion that you're talking about.
I would call it processing capacity, right? So the ability for the processing capacity of a system, or an electromagnetic, database system, computing, whatever the software may be, in a quantum sense, right? A quantum processing system, theoretically being able to read all of the information that's ever existed on the internet in less than a millisecond, right? Like a system like that is what's going to be okay. Take every molecule that we know of existence and give us every single combination you possibly can, and boom, we have a sheet of every single molecular formation that this quantum computational system could have put together and put and theoretically gives us, that we can then take and take to a chemical sense and have these different materials that are made from it. I mean, that's kind of what I see as like the possibility. So maybe
But
yeah.
death, we've gone through like so many different spaces where we've talked about our DNA holding like our ancestral lineage, knowledge. Even 808 has said. So it's not just our lifetime that it gains access to. It is the entire living library of us, and the fact that our DNA is not far off from every other DNA, with the exception of jellyfish,
Well,
and
that's if you.
a few other that are considered like quote unquote alien life forms. So technically, when we integrate in, they will have the library, like instead of just Google, they have our living library that we are integrating in with.
That's what's wild,
Well,
right?
have you done Ancestry.com or something like that? Is that what you mean? I mean, unless you've given it your DNA or that your DNA is on the
Well,
internet. But
my DNA, no, but my daughter's is in there. My mom's is in there. I didn't realize she gave it to.
ooh, you got muffled there for a second. I didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my particular DNA, no, but my mom and my one of my daughter's DNA is in I think
But
23andMe.
even then,
Also,
not just Ancestry.com, you also have the Vatican archives that has history that goes to 1,000 years. You have the Mormon archives, and their history goes back thousands, like millennia. And that's just those ones. Then you got the cultural ones that has like I forgot who just shared it today, 'cause it's the Sakya uh temple or something that has archives of their history, the Tibetan history, Buddhist history, world history that dates to who knows when, and it's a lot of that information that won't be on the digital realm kind of thing. It's not really in circulation, just like how the information of within Hawaii and my history, not a lot of it is in the databases, but some of it is. With what, a lot of these technology I believe you'll be able to do is kind of help sift and help bring out those information that needs be, but it has to be done correctly, and also allow for those that is not able to put forth the correct information to be able to do it. Because we like regular people that has the information about the history, genealogy, and their cultural facts, they don't have the credentials to write a book and allow that to be part of a world history kind of book or something like that. They have to have credentials to allow them to put the information that they know up there, which to me, is kind of wrong in a sense. But even though you still need the information to be hold accountable and correct. You know what I mean? So it is something that's gonna be it's very hard in a sense to kind of achieve, and once achieved is gonna be very beneficial for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, so complex.
yeah, that's what popped in my head was when you mentioned DNA there, Shellfish, and quantum computer on the internet. I was like, well, like you talk about like the 3D printing and cloning of yourself, like that. That's something that it's like the ethical issues behind the actual tools that we have. Then we have to have the rule sets behind what you can and you can't do, because we do hit that singularity moment when things move so quick. There is not. It's nice, in my opinion, if there's some sort of like base floor of rule sets before something like that were to occur. But we don't need 8 billion shellfish just taking over the planet.
Would that really be that bad, Death?
That reminded me of Starship Trooper where they rebuilt the guy's leg with lasers. Remember that movie? That was wild.
Hold on, wait. He gave a thumbs up. That's not even right.
Go. You had your hand up there, shellfish, and then Sierra.
Sierra had hers first. I'll wait.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on we were talking about kind of the abundance of data archives that are not currently on the internet, or also information that's passed down either generationally or by word of mouth, especially in regions in which access maybe isn't common or like prominent in everyday life. And I think it's important. I'm sorry to always be this person in the room, but it was brought up today at the safety meeting as well. Access can be hugely dividing here. It's so important that we get this right, or we are going to split the human population right down the middle with such a far bridge in between that we're like, we just won't coexist anymore. So, with that, I wanted to say I think it's hugely important to ensure that there are, I guess, like global initiatives or by the people to be inputting this information into training modules and stuff, and giving it as much information as possible, because as we move to multimodal modules and like more deep learning modules, it will be able to ascertain based on pattern recognition which information is more likely to be accurate without any human input at all. So it really, I hear a lot of people say like, oh, who is putting the information in is so important, and what is being fed to it, because we could feed it lies. And it's like, yeah, but we also could kind of just not feed it enough for it to make accurate decisions. And I see that being more likely. The other fear tends to come from not really understanding the technology and the reasoning capabilities, especially with like neuromorphic coming. The reasoning capabilities are going to be insane. So it does come down to accurate data, contributing that data, how we're protecting it, ensuring that archives of things that weren't on the internet before are being shared on a broad range with AI, and like encouraging how do we get cultures that don't even really have the internet to also have access to this. Sorry, that was long-winded. I'll land my plane.
No, I love it, and I completely agree. It's one of the pillars of the internet of value, right? Everyone in our species needs to be on board, or it doesn't work. This is a species thing. This isn't like a me or you thing. This is an all thing, in my opinion. So I completely agree. And Shellfish, you had your hand up though, and Dazzling, and then 808.
So you're not on the belief of this underlying conscious thing that we've all been discussing for at least the last 50 years of pro-life, pro-choice, my body, my choice type of thing. It doesn't come down to that vibrational um, choice. You think that it has to be a global, like everyone, like it's all or none for like, it's like a Noah's Ark type thing.
I don't. I think that you might be possibly referring more to the 2030 thing, like the merge. And no, I don't think that should be forced upon all of society to, partake in whatsoever. I think we're going to see another like subdivision of humans that are kind of like, you're going to have your plugged in people and you're not plugged in people. But I do think we'll see more people opt to be plugged in, whatever that looks like, than we might anticipate. Just think about your cell phone now. Most people, your cell phone might as well be attached to you. It's almost annoying that it's not. If you forget your phone, you're like checking your pockets 6 times and looking like it's almost like missing link syndrome. And I've heard other people say that before, and it really is kind of. But if you're talking about as far as training whatever super intelligence comes to power, yeah, I do think that needs to be a global initiative. Like, I don't care if you want to use it, but if you want human society not to perish from it, it's important that we give it all the information that we have on cultures and civilization and history and just data. I don't know. That's just my gut feeling.
I agree.
Yeah, I completely agree. Also, sorry.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Dazzling.
I was going to say, yeah, well, I completely agree as well. But yeah, that's one of the biggest problems that I can kind of see right now is that the data is so unstructured, and there's so much of it. It's just so dirty. You kind of need that process to really clean it all up, to feed it. Otherwise, what happens if it starts to obtain all that, that unclean data? Like, well, what kind of world does that look like? It looks a little scary to me. So there's a lot of talk about regulation, and if I were to, I don't like politics, but if I were to jump in there, one of the first things that I would look at is kind of putting up a, some sort of a filter or a screen to ensure that data that it was being fed was the right data and the correct data. Because I'd hate to see what it would do if it went sentient and it had all that unstructured data. That's really scary.
Oh, sentient, an interesting word of usage there, Dazzling. But 808, you got your hand up. Please go ahead, man.
To tell the truth, I forgot what I was kind of going to say, but I wanted to tap in about, indigenous cultures and bringing out the history and bringing that data into archives. And I want, oh, and just sharing of data, period. We all knew already that at one point it was very hard to even share data, news, or even events that was happening in our own time elsewhere in the world are shared quite quickly. Like nowadays we have that technology where we see it happening like that. And we see the filter and the gatekeeping of data from centralized servers and what they do. So it is very important that us, everyone, understands these technologies and what it can provide to where we can help make sure the regulation that is going to be put forth is for the people and not used to kind of gatekeep what is going to be going into these different databases. But and also going on topic about the culture and indigenous tribes. I've been always been a part of the indigenous peoples conferences and stuff like that through virtual, and there's a lot of that been going on since the 2000s, early 2000s, where there's these conferences that goes around the world where a lot of these cultures come together. Dine people, a lot of different the Polynesia, Asia, around, it's a world thing. So a lot of that has been getting brought out and been getting better and better, and using more things to where a lot of things with cultural that was tied to cultural beliefs and how a lot of these indigenous tribes kind of lost their way kind of thing is being brought out and being kind of saved, and they're coming together to where they can bring forth policies to where they can access a lot of these different information and access and make sure the data that comes out of these places is correct. So it is much more than that than what I'm saying. It's an all-encompassing kind of conference and entity that goes on yearly. I believe so. It has been yearly since the last time. But yeah, it's good stuff.
I always love when you jump in 808.
Always appreciate all you guys. Always.
Mutual, man. Very, always mutual. And going back to what you were saying, Sierra, too. I completely agree with this. This kind of approach when we say like assimilate this from the singularity. It's just like this moment where technology itself begins to just pick up at such a velocity and rate, and the assimilation or possibility of it becomes so possible and so simple that the majority just adopt it. And you'll always have your stragglers or people who just kind of say, "I don't want to do it because I don't want to do it. I don't believe in it." And it'll always exist. I could even imagine if we were in this like really technologically advanced society where we were mecha humanoids, and something new came out, and there would be a whole bunch of mecha humanoids being, I'm not going to do that because that's stupid. I mean, why would I do anything to change right now? This is like what I want. So it'll always be the occurrence of existence. It's just experience, and all experiences should be experienced. It's our choice. um, but in the sense of forcing people, no, never. And it still comes down to at least everybody being able to communicate in the system, right? The sense of us all being able to distribute information, just like 808 was saying. It's so important that we can have this truth source of information that we can all communicate with each other in this non manipulated kind of format that's able to be taken upon someone like a Google shutting down servers or whatever in the long term. Because that's definitely something that if you even go to like old websites today, there is plenty of information on the internet that existed in the early 2000s that is not even accessible anymore, just because the servers themselves aren't hooked up to the internet. They're not powered, so you can't access that information that exists.
Yeah, and oh, don't get me started on like the cloud provider problem, because that is going to be a similar type problem in the near future. Uh, but like cloud monopolies for data storage are, I don't want to say forming, they have formed,
Oh,
they
I
have
was just about
silently
to
formed.
say, yeah, they have formed
Yeah,
already.
they have formed and nobody was paying attention, and now they rule all. And if you do any sort of cloud computing of your own, you know that their pricing is whatever they want it to be that month. There is absolutely no clear outline of like how much it will cost me to run certain anything. It's kind of just like a, I'm sure there is a formula, I'm exaggerating, but if you have experience with cloud-based servers, you know what I mean. And we're going to rely on them heavily to account for a lot of this storage. Like, especially lightweight AI models should be pulling data from like decision trees that are in the cloud. Somebody call me out on that technically there, but I'm pretty sure that's how they work currently. They don't all need internet access, but if you want like live information updates, they do. And yeah, just data is also going to be a rising problem, and I think will contribute to the disparity.
And all of this leads to this resilient push to reach this quantum era, where the computational ability itself increases at such a megafold that the velocity of everything that kind of gets pulled with it, the all the technological advancements and the sociological aspects of that flywheel, I think it kind of creates what some may think of as like this utopian society that will eventually exist in the next 25, 30 years. And Flair community, or John, welcome up, man. I'm glad you came up. You have any thoughts or anything you want to add to the conversation?
Hey, what's up, guys? Yeah, I just wanted to pop on and maybe maybe introduce something that you might want to discuss. I don't know. But obviously AI, it's quite a hot topic, right? But with any AI, if you put bad data in, you get bad data out, right? So I was thinking, what happens if there's people in the future that may want to sort of provide a sort of initiate an attack on a AI system where they purposely sort of input loads of data. Maybe it's like a spam attack, like a DDoS style attack, but with wrong data that's not factual, right? How is that going to be prevented? Because, AI, the bigger the data set, the more accurate it could potentially be, right? But if there's a large percentage of data that's being inputted via an attack, it sort of trains the model to believe that that's true. And you want to have it to a point where anyone can contribute, right? That's how you get a diverse data set. But what's from stopping anyone doing that? Do you think the future is maybe in a centralized manner where you've only got, say, academics that are inputting this data into the model, or only from verified research papers, or, because as you know, a lot of these language models and AI systems can scour the internet at incredible speeds. And as we've seen recently with, say, posts on the XRP ledger about various partnerships, they can quite easily be forged on, Photoshop a couple of documents, and it spreads like wildfire. And if there's an AI system that's sort of digesting that, it leaves it open to interpretation, where it's not actually producing results that are true and accurate, right? So yeah, what are your thoughts on that about, I guess, verifying data that's ingested by AI systems?
Can I talk
So,
real quick
so
before I gotta go there?
Yeah, if you would like to, I know you and Sierra both want to comment on it. So go ahead, and I definitely have a couple examples of different scenarios and timelines depending on the situation. But yeah, 808 man, please go ahead, and then
That's why I
Sierra, and
love,
then
because
I'll comment.
we all see a lot of projects working on oracles and data, and making sure there's policies and how it is at a level where a system we need, to make sure data is accurate, and these entities are being fed exactly what you were saying, because like how you're saying it does will make a huge impact, because we see that kind of sort of thing happening today with just chat GPT, whether it's only reading certain data, and we already know just at a most basic level how much it affects. Like if you just ask it about Ripple and XRP, it's just gonna keep going on around and on and around in circles with a certain questions when you ask it. So it is very important. There was actually an AI Bill of Rights that they produced last year. Was it last year, Shellfish? It was, yeah, like October or something
I
like
think it
that.
was in November of last
Yeah,
year.
and it went deep into detail about a lot of this information, data, servers it's holding, and who they would allow, kind of thing. And it's getting more deeper to now. Like this past week, they had a meeting about it too. I haven't gotten really deep into being able to do more about it because of the situation I'm in here at home. But like Oracle systems with Flare, what they're building on the back end, I believe is something good to look at, to how we see all data and how we can make sure when it's fed through these systems that it's correct. Then you got other systems that's similar to Flare, that's building structures as so. So we are seeing a lot of these technologies, and not just the technologies, hardware to itself being is catching up to things that we need to, where is the system at the most basics of its foundation that needs to be managed and maintained, because at the right now it's not really, it's a system based on people's thoughts themselves, that like our governments, they're not, their whole structure and the system itself is corrupted. So we need policies and procedures at that level to kind of help produce more things that we need for the future, in a sense. But yeah, I gotta go. Hello everybody, take care. I'm gonna sit and listen.
You too. Love you, brother. Thank you, 808, for speaking.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just going to quickly follow that, because I think it's quite interesting you mentioned oracles, right? And it's quite a limited set of data, right? It's about price feeds predominantly for a lot of the oracles in the space. And yeah, they have ambitions to bring Web 2 data onto an oracle system for the Flare time series oracle anyway. But what happens if the topic of conversation is quite niche, right? So say you have an AI system and it gets attacked about sort of renaming what Mercury is called, for example, the planet. And that's going to be quite hard because there's many articles about that, right? And lots of research papers. So it would have to be a massive attack. But what happens if it's something quite niche, where it's maybe a battle that was fought out in Africa in the 17th century, right? Well, that there's not many articles on there. And if it goes on an oracle system where it's weighted on the amount of people and what they're saying, you wouldn't necessarily need that many inputs to sort of divert the actual truth of history. So I don't know. I think it's a weird one with such a diverse range of different things. The topics are basically unlimited. So if it's an oracle system where you're trying to reach consensus based on the amount of data or the articles or mentions, if it's something really obscure, then that would open up, I guess, some vulnerabilities.
Sierra, you wanna jump on it, and then I'll give my thoughts, because I definitely have a thought for that also.
Sure. My initial thought was thwarted kind of in a good way by 808's comments, and talking about data sets and verification of data, and something that I don't hear often in these conversations, maybe because when we talk about AI, we mostly talk about LLMs and like language models, but sensor data is sensors are becoming much cheaper in nature. and like the data that they need to travel and carry information with networks like the Helium network and LoRaWAN sensors. I think that obviously this doesn't work as well for all types of information, but I think I would love to see a rise in real-time like sensor data driven contributions. I see somebody laughing at me down there. I know it would take a lot of capacity, but really, like, it just depends on the handoffs. It's not impossible. So, like, if everyone had a soil and humidity sensor, we wouldn't necessarily need to get the weather from like space weather stations. We could get more hyper localized weather based on pools of data, and like those types of things I think will become more accurate. Roadway and like travel data, GPS data, things like that will become less foolproof. I think, I hope, that's what I hope to see anyway. And seeing AI being hugely advantageous just in sorting through all that data. And with quantum, the amount of data we'll be able to do, like the parallel processing, we'll be able to have so much more access to real-time data that is from source and not from human input.
Ooh, that was an interesting take on the adding to the Oracle kind of thought to where the information could be sourced from. I love that. I actually wasn't even thinking you were going to touch on that. I thought you were going to go right to the to me also to right the source. You're very right, John. The source is extremely important. And so today, in most characteristics of these large language models or these smart systems we have, they're characterized as machine learning, right? And so there is a weighted system that is in the background that is dependent on the information that's given to it, that it spits you out and most likely output based off of the weights of the information it's gotten. When you start talking about things like deep learning and neural networks, which we are very coming up on being something taken from CNNs, which were conventional neural networks, huge hundreds of acres of databases that were then breaking down bits of information and then computing that between different servers to try and relay the information just the same way that the neural capacity of our brains, the neurons firing off, makes a synaptics connection in a bridge. And so we now have things like these neuromorphic chip designs, which assimilate the same electromagnetic frequencies that happen in the brain, firing off by the neurons, in the synthetic silicon-based formation. IBM's already down to 2 nanometers, the transmitters they're able to put onto a chip. So now this is not exactly replicating exactly how the human brain thinks, but giving the ability for a deep learning system. In this particular instance, you made a really good example of like this really niche kind of example where there's this source of information that somebody wants, but there's just not any real great information. A deep learning system could kind of be the same mindset of the way that we could think, that we would maybe try and think about the situation, and you could relay it to that, and it give you an answer where you're like, you know what, you're right, that's what I was thinking, and so thank you for giving me an answer based off of all this source of truth information that I had here. Short term. Long term, I think that everyone that exists will have the capability to be a node themselves, down to the level of our DNA being able to distribute electromagnetic frequencies, which will be able to not only communicate with each other, but understand things, and beyond the grasp of what we could really fathom today, being capable just by the notion of thought in our electromagnetic brains that are something is occurring. And this goes with like the advancements of technologies like BCIs and your Neuralinks and different things like the brain chip in China and stuff that they have already. Yeah, so that, like, long term, I think that the distribution of the information becomes so vast, and the ability for us to communicate becomes so superior, that the thought of a malicious actor just simply they have no input, as they're not able to become a truth or a source of truth, because there's just such a distribution of the information that occurs. And Shellfish, you got your hand up. Though I'd like to hear your thoughts on what I said, though, if you're able to speak first, John.
No, very interesting, but I'm eating right now just before the stream, so I'm gonna have to just sort of linger in the background, I'm afraid. Start
No, it's
working a little bit.
thank you for coming up and speaking, man. It was a great question and topic. Go
Yeah,
selfish
no
though.
worries.
Go ahead and then dazzling.
John, I've like talked to like a few people in like the cybersecurity spaces, and they were saying it's just as important to have like all these people, because even hackers and like the people that are out there trying to safeguard, like everybody's information is being taken in, so everybody is feeding the data set. So just as much as you have bad players, you have good players, and these games are being played and it's learning as it goes. So, we have people that are like negative that come into our spaces, and as much as they are annoying, they serve their purpose, and we're learning from them and learning how to integrate and balance them out, right? We don't want to chase them away. We want to figure out how to integrate and work together in harmony, which is why like this morning I was like, up, moonrise is here, I'm gonna try to like make this like a second to like try to figure this out. That's why when Jimmy comes in, I do the same thing with him. Like I know he can be a little abrasive, but I try to figure out how to make him part of the system as well, because everybody serves a purpose, right? We have like the Turing test and we have chaos, and it's all about growing and testing the system, and it's all important. It's for the whole system to grow. It has to happen, unfortunately, I think, in my opinion, that way.
Shellfish is the virus management system for
Well,
spaces.
I mean,
That's
no,
good.
no,
It's
but
good.
I
No,
mean,
it's good.
you can't just go and like say here's an atom bomb, and expect a machine to know what to do with it. Like you have to start out with here's a boo boo, you scratched yourself, figure out how to fix it, and then work up from there. So same thing with the machine. Like you can't you can't tell it to cure cancer without telling it to figure out how to cure a cold first.
Definitely, yeah, yeah. No, it's a good balance, definitely to have. But I just wanted to thank the community for kind of saying or expressing what I was trying to say a little earlier, but much more elegantly. So thank you. But yeah, so I was kind of thinking about what you were saying, Death, with these kind of nodes and spreading them out, and not having that vulnerability of kind of losing everything all at once. And I was watching a doco, and basically, or the other day I watched a few. They were kind of alluding to the fact that how we are so spread out across the globe now that there's no one kind of failure or endpoint there. If we got hit by an asteroid or something like that. But it kind of makes me think about the data and, excuse me, isn't that kind of how distributed ledger technology is kind of evolving by having the data kind of spread out? I mean, a ledger is literally just data anyway, right? Do you see where I'm
Yeah, no,
going with that? Yeah.
it's a great example of where we are at this today, and this is why I call this such an inflection point for our species, because we're at this point where we've like, all right, we have this means of not only having a digital distributed system, but it's cryptographic in the way that we can enable it to exist publicly, openly, without the means of some malicious actor trying to take it down. Because it's all fine and dandy if you have a distributed system, right? But going back to like the DDoS attacks, if somebody can maliciously take it down, it's not really going to be able to be utilized by the species in a full capacity. So yeah, I completely agree. And you want to still speak? I'm sorry, Dazzling. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I saw Shelley put her hand up as well. I was just going to say I have to drop down. So no, thank you again for an awesome episode. I'll be listening for a little bit though. So I'll speak to you later.
I was thinking this actually comes back to having like the abundance that you were talking about, and that actually helping resolve a lot of the malicious actors, right? Because why are they attacking? Are there people being attacked first, and they feel like they have to retaliate? Do they not have enough food? Because people, excuse me, if they don't have their basic needs met, that's usually why they're acting out, right? Like food, shelter, not feeling like they're having their hierarchy of needs like satisfied, right?
I would say it doesn't matter the reason, right? I mean, because you can make any reason you want for doing something malicious. It's just a reason, or where you could term it an excuse. I would say we still have to build the tools with the thought that there will be a malicious actor. What if it's not even our species? What if it's another species that senses our planet and says, "Oh, these are means of system information I can take control of, and this will be my attack route." Theoretically. So, yeah, you always have to think security, efficiency, and then UI and how well it and the ease of its usage. At least in my opinion, of course. And Zara, you haven't gotten to speak yet, but if you have any comments or any thoughts on anything we've said, please feel free to let me know what you're thinking.
Oh, I've just been just listening, really. Just been trying to keep up with you guys. I did have to Google earlier what AIG meant, but I'm getting there.
Yeah, and listen, if you ever have any questions about anything specific, even the definitions themselves, as right, words or spellcraft, be the third dimensional external creation of electromagnetic frequencies to try and explain the intent behind the experience I'm trying to have others experience with me. If you need help understanding my what I'm trying to express the intent on, always stop me and ask, because I have no difficulty going back, because I know I confuse myself all the time. So
Appreciate it. Thank you.
this has been a really fun conversation, and we're coming up right on that 5 o'clock mark. Just like John said, he has a stream that starts at 5 o'clock, and so I will be closing the space right before that to join that stream, and the Discord chat after that we have for the Patreon group that he has. But if anybody has any questions or wants to keep going on any of the topics that we were speaking about, I'll probably think of something in the next 2 minutes that I'll keep speaking on. But yeah, if you guys would like to, Shellfish, Sierra, go ahead, Sierra. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to jump in and say I just pinned something to the nest up top. I've never done that before, so sorry. If you want to take it down, feel free to. But Zara, you mentioned getting hung up on some terminology, which I assume probably happens to a lot of people when they listen to any sort of tech conversation, because there's so much terminology thrown around. So I threw a little cheat sheet that I excuse me, made a long time ago for the difference between quantum computing and neuromorphic computing. If you would like to see more things like that, or if you find them beneficial, please let me know, because I literally made one and it didn't get much attention, so I never did it again. But if that's something that you think will help with education and people will find value in, or if there's anything you'd like to see expanded in that type of format, please let me know, DM me.
Oh, and now that you said that, Sierra, popped into my head was something I would love to talk on. So that thought of neuromorphic chip design, right? These very large at this time, and one company I particularly like called Synaptic, that's designing these new industrial neuromorphic chips that are modularly built. So you can not only have one, but you can have hundreds of thousands of them that could all be interconnected with each other. Just like our brain. I mean, just a simplistic thought that you have in your brain could fire off something like 5 to 10 to 50,000 different neurons, depending on the thought, or something more, even 200,000 neurons, depending on how intricate of the pathway you're taking with your thought that you're having. The thought that we can kind of recreate that in a neuromorphic design in a computational way, where we can have a display LED screen or LCD screen that is able to relay us some sort of information that's going on that system, paired with things like Stephen Wolfram with like a natural language model. I think this really like encompassing all of the symbolization of the intent behind the words that we use and try and describe them, really gives us this smart tooling set that could enable every one of us, regardless of the source of the information, could enable all of us to have some sort of interconnected with selves with each other at an already existing level. Like this is already possible today. So I think it's really cool to see where we are at this moment and thinking of neuromorphic chip designs.
Okay, I have two questions. You actually jarred my memory as well. Okay, one, where would these chips be utilized? Or they're not being utilized yet, right? These are being developed. Are these things that would go into our phone, into the glasses, into computers, or like is this like further down the line, like into us?
Every single device that exists, every single object that exists could particularly have some sort of smart integrated unit built into it modularly. Yeah, I don't see any reason why not. And then when you go to us, I mean, I'm not going to say we're going to put a neuromorphic chip design inside of us. This is more trying to recreate the electromagnetic frequencies that are going on in the brain, the synaptics in particular. But having like something like a BCI where we could communicate Wi-Fi with another neuromorphic chip server, yeah, I don't see any reason why not. I think that could increase the aptitude and the ability for us to have the awareness of information being distributed into us as the source. So when it like goes to learning, that Matrix moment when she wanted to learn how to fly the helicopter in like 30 seconds. I mean, maybe not as fast as that, but the thought of something like that being a possibility becomes very possible. And then if you think of like a haptic suit, you could also then theoretically, because one thing is teaching you how to fly a helicopter in your brain, another thing is like having you feel like you've flown a helicopter 100 times. And so like a haptic suit with the right signals going off could also teach your body like you've flown a helicopter 100 times. But Shellfish, go ahead. I know you have another question.
Okay, so my second part would be like, so you're saying that these would be in like the new, say, smartphones, correct? That's what I'm understanding. So, ironically, this morning my dad was saying, "Oh, my phone is outdated. I need to get a new one." I think his is like 6 years old or something like that. So it made me also think of that interview that they were doing in front of, I think it was Congress, and how the generations were just coming up that were born into Bitcoin and knew nothing else, and that they would be coming into a world where they're driving and etc. So the fact that we are going to have within the next 6 years everybody on the phones that we're talking about right now, or smart devices that have at least the technology of today by 2030. So I'm just curious if that's the shift that everybody's waiting for, is that baseline cell phones of like, say, my dad, who's got a phone that's 6 years old and is ready to renew and is now going to have one that's from 2023. So his baseline is now going to be 2023 phone and smart chips. So it's going to be at least at that level. So is that basically where we're waiting for right now, is just that shift that everybody is in the devices that are updated with the newer Morphe chips, etc. Am I understanding that right?
Well, I do not think that I may be mistaken, but I don't think there's a neuromorphic chip design that's going to be in the phone he's going to purchase. I
Well,
I don't know what phone brand, but this is sorry, go ahead.
I just meant like we're waiting for the devices to be ready for everybody. Maybe it's not the Morphe chip right now, but we're waiting for those chips to constantly be updated. And right now there's so many people that either don't have a phone or need the newer phones and technology to get to where we need to be by 2030, or that's where their projected date is.
Are you talking about it from like an Internet of Value perspective? What is the
Well,
implicit?
I'm kind of confused, because are we going with like in body, or are we talking about smart devices?
I think I can take a stab at this. So best real life use cases of like neuromorphic computing power that I think we'll see / already are would be full self-driving cars. and other forms of robotics, because what makes them so unique is their ability to do mass parallel processing in very, very, very short periods of time, which would be good for highly reactive decision-making systems like that of self-driving cars, or things that need to be able to process immense amounts of data in real time and then make a decision. But beyond that, as far as consumer products go, the bigger holdup than the hardware is actually the connectivity factor right now, and latency. We're just not there until 5G is fully rolled out, and we can start kind of moving some applications that might run over different channels right now, and offloading that onto 5G. 5G is primarily going to be for things that require a lot of latency and high speed. They're not building that for our cell phone network. But that's the other kind of part of that hold up. I hope that helps, Shellfish.
Thank you, Sierra.
Yeah, I don't think you gain, like, if you had like a neuromorphic chip in your phone, I don't think you gain some sort of like super superiority because you had such a chip. What really makes them so like a magnitude of increase in efficiency comparably to like the servers of computational systems we have today, if the energy output is there to power these different types of neuromorphic designs in a server setting where there are large acres of servers that exist and these chips could be modularly put together, the computational ability and the feedback that can come out, the output that can come out of that, becomes like much more similar to like what you would get communicating with us. The ability to deep learn, right, to take a subject matter, for it to look at the internet and not just based off of weights of what it's been given make a decision, but based off of its own information it's taken and make an outcome that would be very similar to something that we wouldn't expect, similar to like a human being, right? You don't necessarily know what next action a human being is going to make. I think that is the advantage of these types of systems, or chips, I should say, in particular.
Well, yeah, I mean, they did say that we're not that far off from them anticipating our moves past one. Like, that's not that far off.
Yeah, and so I'll throw like a theoretical thing that just popped in my head. Okay, so you have a modularly built phone. It has a photonic solid state chip connected to the neuromorphic design chip that's connected to the application architecture chip, right? Just basically all the regular computation that's going off in the form of bits on the phone, right? All three of these things combined, in the sense of the technologies that exist, the efficiencies that could then come from that, if you had something like a BCI that could be connected to you, right? I mean, your phone could exist anywhere and you could have computational data that could be streamed directly to you, anything directly, just the thought of using thought. Now, at that point, maybe you don't even need a phone, maybe just the information exists on a satellite. And so, like the neuromorphic chip design is in the BCI and is also in the satellite. And so it's reading your neurons, which is distributing based off of this photonic solid state chip, which is communicating with a quantum processor somewhere else, and then relaying that to a neuromorphic chip design in a satellite, which is then relaying all that information to a giant server that is then having the hosted neuromorphic chip designs, which then relays all that information, just like a giant, right, a giant spider web. Everybody is interconnected that then is a part of that type of digital system, and so the distribution of information could be so powerful.
7 years is so far and yet so close.
Yes.
I think it's generous. I'm just going to go out there and say it. I know that no one else is saying it, but I actually think that 7 years is generous, just merely based on if you looked at projections of what we thought our capabilities would be now, 16 months ago. We are exceeding a lot of expectations. And I feel like as adaptation becomes more widespread and these tools are trained better, I don't know. I think that 7 years is generous.
I do agree, especially if you add into the aspect of the sociological means of where the world is at the state with this inflection point where kind of where the majority of us seem to be all at each other, and it's times of great change that occur during times of great atrocity, unfortunately. But this being this like mechanic that historically we can look at to say that this is kind of average in the way that at least we seem to formulate a new sociological means of society, hopefully in this endeavor more loving and empathetic, and a means of sustenance and sustainability from a long-term perspective, thousands of years rather than 100 to 150 year kind of thought. But yeah, I completely agree. Shellfish, though, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
I think it was just my hand was stuck up. I was stunned. I'm kind of like in awe right now. We had a really good discussion today. I can't believe there's so many people in the room and I'm the only one that's like chomping at the bit to like ask questions. Dude, like I am like okay with being the fool as far as asking questions. If anybody ever doesn't want to speak up, I have no problem being the megaphone and asking the questions because I don't feel silly asking them. I think the ones that are not asked are the silly questions. So I won't out you, I promise.
We got 5 minutes. I mean, you think it, you go ahead and ask it right now, as long as it's somewhat on topic, and I will do my best to answer it.
No, I'm saying if anybody wanted to message me, I would be more than happy to be a mouthpiece for them if they were embarrassed and wanted to ask a stupid question. Because I have no shame and ask stupid questions as often as I possibly can.
There are no such thing as stupid questions, but I can vouch for Shellfish because she has definitely asked some questions for me back in my shy days when I didn't speak.
Oh, that's awesome. Zara, go ahead. You have your hand up.
I was just going to say, I was in a bit of a debate the other day about ChatGPT, and they were like, "What can it be classed as artificial intelligence if it just pulls things from the internet that's already there? So how, like, is it AI? Why is it classed as AI?" And I was like, I don't actually know. So yeah, I was wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Oh God, did she do that on purpose, Shellfish? That's so perfect for me, isn't it? All right, so I'm one in particular, right? And I write AI. I don't even want to say artificial intelligence for two reasons, because I try and say augmented intelligence. Actually, Crow is the one that gave me that idea, but. I don't believe anything to be of existence to be artificial. The fact that there is a possibility for the atomic assimilation of those chemicals to be bound together and exist in what we would call nature, as reality is nature to us, in my opinion, doesn't make it to be artificial. I understand the intent behind it is to try and describe something that has been man made, or made at least with our hands, that we haven't found just existing in nature, not that it couldn't exist somewhere else in the same exact manner, right? It's like there's no way to know plastic bottles don't exist on some planet just by nature's making of plastic somehow, those chemicals coming together. Highly unlikely, but everything's possible. And it's like that. Okay, so I that's just me trying to think, because I don't think the word artificial really is a good way to describe anything. And then intelligence is really just one's opinion based off of another's actions, the response of the intent that I think existed behind that. So I look at chair and say, well, I don't think the chair is intelligence because the chair just sits there and it's a chair. But if I looked at it from a horizon of 3 billion years, the chair's particles, the literal atoms that exist inside of the chair, may exist in multiple different intelligent creatures, or creatures that have the same understanding or awareness of the third dimensional existence as I do. And so it's like, who am I to judge something's intelligence? At this moment, chair is chair. But chair may not always be chair. I may not always be human. I may not always be me. And so I can't bring myself to say the words artificial intelligence. And then on top of that, I think it's a horrible kind of like, guys, we just throw everything, all of these smart tooling sets under the term like artificial intelligence. Chat GPT is a large language model. So a weighted model, it takes the information that's been distributed to it, and based off of the weights that it has in the back end, somebody's given it a you can think of like an agenda, right? The ability for it to say what it's going to say, and when it says something that it's not supposed to, they change the weights a little bit to kind of fit exactly what that particular instance of ownership behind the entity wants. And so, like, large language model, we just call it artificial intelligence, but everybody calls everything artificial intelligence. It hurts my heart sometimes, but yeah, I completely agree with you. That was long-winded too. I'm sorry. Oof. Shellfish, go ahead.
I love your chair analogy, and we keep going back to this in the Stoic space because the chair is a tree that reached its potential. It's so awesome because it's kind of like water. Like water is, it can be in ice, right? A solid state. It can be in ether. It can be liquid. So it can start out and you think it's just dirt, and there's a seed, and it grows into a tree, and then the tree, you don't know what its full potential can be, but then it ends up as a chair, and then that same chair can be broken down back into soil, right? Because it can be burned and go into that state. And so the cycle of life and its existence, it's pretty beautiful if you think about it.
Yeah, and I loved that, right? It was a tree before it was a chair, right? Who am I calling it a chair? It was a tree, and before it was a tree, it was a star. I mean, like, it's incredible. But Sierra, you close this up. I'll finish up after you speak.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that Elon called us trees today. So if you guys do go back and watch that AI safety video, it's funny that this came up because he literally equated us to trees in that our movement is slow as compared to that of a super intelligence. So I'll end with that. We are trees.
Oh, that was beautiful. Zara, I saw you put your hand up, though. If you want to speak, please go ahead.
Oh no, just quickly, I was just going to say, Selfish made me think of it. There's a documentary on Netflix called A Trip to Infinity, and it's about, obviously they look into the different types and meanings of infinity, but they have a theory on there where they have an apple in an airtight box for like billions and billions of years. What would happen to that apple and all the atoms that are in there? And eventually, after it's decayed and whatever, and it's gone through all the sequences, it ends up being an apple again. And that just blew my mind. But yeah, that's a really cool documentary if anyone wants to watch that.
Love it. This was an incredible space, and I really thank you guys. I love that I was surrounded by females. Also, this was cool. You guys are the best. Love you all. I will be back tomorrow, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time, for another space. I will probably keep it very similar to the topics at least above today. I love this conversation, so maybe we can keep it going tomorrow. Either way, though, I hope everybody has a great rest of the night. Night, everybody.
Night, Death Ranger. Night, Sierra. Night, Sarah. Night, everyone.
Good night, all. Thank you.